Let's walk through the process of creating these custom ring labels using RingThing and a cutting machine like this. We'll be covering the entire workflow, including how to use the cutting machine software, in this case Cricut Design Space. We'll also be looking at printing and laminating materials, and how to use the 3D printed jigs that are included in the app to help you align the labels with the rings. To get started, jump into RingThing and choose the theme that you want to use. I'll use Kohler for this demo. And I want to create a custom focus ring for a TLS rehoused 39mm Mamiya lens, so I'll choose the LDA for it. For best results when importing into Cricut Design Space, I want to export this design as a PNG file. And I'll just save to files now so I can import it into Cricut Design Space. You might prefer to just use AirDrop to send it to your computer. So to use a Cricut cutting machine, we need to use the print then cut feature, which means we do both printing and cutting as part of the same workflow in the Cricut Design Space software. So let's walk through the steps needed to do that. Open Cricut Design Space and start with a blank canvas. Go to the Upload option in the left-hand toolbar and then choose Upload Image. Browse to where you exported the labels from RingThing and choose the label you want to import. For Print Then Cut, we want to import this image as a flat graphic. So choose that option and then proceed to upload it. Now, when the image has been imported, it's very important to resize it to the correct scale. So making sure the aspect is locked, go to the height box and resize the image to 29.7 centimeters. The width should end up as 21 centimeters, or just over in this case. With this done, we know we have the correct scale and we can remove the reference part of the image that we don't want to print or cut. So to do this, go for the left-hand toolbar, choose Shapes, choose a square, and drag it over the label that we want to keep. Now make sure that both the new shape and the original image are selected, and go down to the slice option in the lower right corner. Now we delete all the parts that we don't want to keep, leaving just the label that we want to print. So the Cricut will cut anywhere there's a border between solid image and a transparent canvas. So it'll cut around the label, and for Hi-5 labels, it'll cut out the alignment hole as well. So I'll import a different label as well, just to step through the process again. We want to be able to print multiple labels per sheet just to make better use of the materials. We're going to print 4 labels on this sheet for the demonstration, but you should be able to get around 6 if you really squeeze them in using this technique. Now that we've imported 2 labels, I'll speed the other 2 up just to get through it a bit quicker. Now that we've imported our 4 labels, let's get ready to print and cut. Press the Make button in the upper right corner, and then save the project if you want to when prompted. I like to save a project if I think I might come back and print and cut this combination again. So now we need to choose our paper size. For this demo, we're using A4 sheets, so I'll choose A4 in the drop-down on the left-hand side. Before we actually print, we'll talk about the kind of paper we'll be printing on, so don't worry that we haven't discussed that yet. And if you want to, you can change the layout of the labels. I don't really need to here, I'm just doing it to show you that you can. Click Continue when you're happy with the layout. Now we need to configure our print options. These can have quite a large impact on the overall print quality of the job, so I'll show you what I've found to work well. I leave Add Bleed on to help compensate for any slight inaccuracy of the cutting machine, and enable Use System Dialog to access the advanced printer options. Hit Print to bring up the System Print dialog. For this Epson printer that we're using, I like to go into the printer options and then print settings to access the print media type and the print quality. I'm going to choose glossy photo paper for the print media type and then best quality. Now we're all set up to print. Now before we print the sheet with the labels on it, let's talk about what we're going to print on. For this walkthrough, we're using a glossy white vinyl sticker paper. Here's a link to scan or screenshot to take you to this exact product. I don't know if it's available outside Australia, but you'll be able to find plenty of things that are equivalent. Let's send this to the printer and see our creation come to life. I sped that up, of course. The printer's not that fast. Now before we cut, we need to laminate. Here I'm using matte pouches that are 80 microns thick. You may not want to laminate, but I've found this combination of a glossy white vinyl with a matte laminate gives a really nice finish, but you may prefer something else. Just take care with the combination of laminator and pouch that you use, because sometimes you can get an incompatible combination that can lead to some bubbling. Now we are almost ready to cut. Take the laminated sheet and put it in the upper left corner of the Cricut cutting mat. Smooth it out to make sure it's lying flat on the mat. And make sure the little triangular arrow is in the top left corner and pointing up. Now we go back to Cricut Design Space to set the machine up for cutting. After printing, there are a couple of dialogues prompting you to check that the registration marks printed correctly and that you've got the orientation of the sheet correct on the cutting mat. Next, we need to tell the Cricut software which material we're going to be cutting. For the laminated vinyl sheet, I've found that a light cardstock works well. Then we need to set the cutting pressure that we want to use for the kiss cut. I've found for this combination that setting it to more gives a cleaner cut. Note the on-screen instructions to make sure you've got the correct cutting tool installed in your Cricut machine. Now we load the cutting mat into the Cricut and press the start button. Now before we apply the first label, which will be for a Hi-5 ring, let's talk about the 3D printed jigs that we'll be using to help us accurately align the labels with the rings. You can find the STL files for printing on the share sheet in RingThing. We have versions for both Hi-5 and WCU-4, with more planned for the future. For the most accurate alignment with Hi-5 rings, the 3D printed jig accepts a 12mm long, 1.5mm diameter dowel pin. As we'll see in a moment, this pin aligns with the holes that you'll see in Hi-5 rings. Having kiss cut the labels with the Cricut cutting machine, they're really easy to peel off. So we take the whole label off and we place the hole at the top over the dowel pin that we were just talking about. And to make sure the label will be square with the ring, we position the label between the lower label fence on the jig. Now align the ring with the jig and press down to make contact with the label. Now we remove the ring and the label together from the jig. And that's the hardest part done. Using the jig gives us a good start for applying the rest of the label. Now we just work our way around the ring, making sure we stay on the face of it. Now just work back around the ring a couple of times to make sure the label hasn't scrunched up anywhere. Magnifique! Now it's time to pop it on a Hi-5 to see how it looks and to see how the marks line up. So that's the Hi-5 ring done. Let's take a look at how we do a WCU-4 ring. The process is very much the same. The main difference is there's just no alignment hole for the WCU-4 rings. So we rely only on the notch for alignment. And the WCU-4 jig is different because there's a flange on one side of the WCU-4 rings. As with the Hi-5 rings, using the jigs gives us a good start to make sure we put the label on the ring squarely, which makes the rest of the application a lot easier. So we just work our way around the ring, making sure we push the label snug against the fence as we go to make sure it's properly aligned. And there you go. We've just created 2 custom rings. Job done. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments below. You can get RingThing for free from the Apple App Store.